So we have been going through this study called Rooted, and we are now finishing the study called Rooted. Today is our last day. We have been in this for about 10 weeks, and I hope it's been a good 10 weeks for you guys. It has been good for us. It's been good for me. My small group has been, I think, greatly encouraged and greatly challenged through the study that we've been going through. So we're going to finish that up today, just kind of as a placeholder. Next week, we're diving into a little bit of a Christmas series. Not many of you probably know this about me necessarily. I'm not a huge, Christmas movie fan necessarily. You laugh already, my goodness. I do have a Grinch shirt. Maybe I'll wear it next week. So we are actually diving into a Christmas series specifically, and I am going to, this is going to shock you, pick some of my favorite Christmas movies, and we're going to unpack them together. 4 of them. I actually don't have 4 Christmas movies that are my favorite, so we're tacking on one that's maybe not my favorite. But 3 of them I can get down with 3 of them. So we're going to do that. It's going to be a great time. Invite your friends, invite family, whoever maybe has been a little hesitant to come to church because it's all serious. We're going to laugh, I think. We're going to watch clips of movies. We're not just watching movies. It's not taking place. But we're going to show some clips. I will give you a spoiler alert. We are dealing with Elf, and we are dealing with my favorite movie, Christmas movie of all time. No. Christmas Vacation. Yeah, that's right. It is happening in here in 2 weeks. Okay, that's a spoiler alert. All right, so let's dive into today. Today we are talking about, as we finish Rooted, we're talking about thinking outside the box. I brought with me a box. I had a bigger box, but then I'm like, I don't need a bigger box. This box is going to do fine. Deb, will you watch my box? Thank you. Deb's going to watch my box. It's important that she keeps an eye on the box, and you'll find out in a minute why. Have you guys ever experienced different motivational trends, different things that companies and people use in order to motivate people? Have you ever seen this, or you ever seen those posters they put up where it's trying to motivate you, success, everybody getting on the same team, or there's no I in team, stuff like that. Anybody? So I picked some of my favorite posters. I thought maybe you might enjoy. Let's just see if you've seen these or you've seen these at all. This one says demotivation. Sometimes the best solution to morale problems is just to fire all the unhappy people. First service got really tense. Okay, I'm gonna be honest. We gotta laugh at this as a joke. Okay, all right. Let's do another one. Get to work. You aren't being paid to believe in the power of your dreams. It's a good one. Really motivates you to get to your job. How about this one? Career, where dreams go to die. How about this one? Paradise. Knowing there are places like this all over the world makes going to your boring job that much harder. I didn't make these up. I just found these. How about this one? Potential. Not everyone gets to be an astronaut when they grow up. With a picture of French fries that you have to believe are McDonald's. Just saying, somebody's got to do it. Okay, number 6, goals. It's best to avoid standing directly between a competitive jerk and his goals. Some of you identify with the person pushing the kid down. I'm just saying. We use different things to try and motivate people. Sometimes we say things, like if you've been around coaching environments, like team coaching, or maybe you coach teams, maybe you're a leader of a team. Maybe you've said some of these things like, we need to make sure that we're all on the same page, right? Because people understand what that means, right? We're all going the same direction. We're all, kind of in alignment with what we're doing. How about this one? Take it to the next level. Do better than you have been because you haven't been trying your hardest, right? How about this one? Think outside the box. Heard of that one before? What does it mean? What does it mean to think outside the box? Well, I think it means that we're trying to get people to think in a new way. We've limited ourselves. Sometimes we limit ourselves, don't we? To thinking just in a certain scope. And sometimes we limit ourselves. We need to think outside the box. We need to think bigger than just our box. We're talking about church, obviously, today. And today, in talking about church, we want to think outside the box. We want to think bigger than just the box. Because for so many people, when we think about church, and we think about what could be in church, we think about what could happen or what could take place or what things we can do, so many times we limit ourselves by the box, don't we? We limit ourselves by what fits nicely into our little box that we call church. Where does it come from? Sometimes it comes from basically the thought that we've always done it a certain way, and we always have to continue doing it a certain way. That's limiting ourselves. We're putting it inside the box. Maybe it's just a fear of things getting out of control. Maybe it's a fear of not knowing how to handle things. We're putting things inside the box. And here's what we do as well when thinking about church. Too many people, when thinking about church, they think about church as a box, like itself, like this building is a box. And we need to think bigger than this box that we're in. Like we come to this box and we sit here in our certain spots inside the box and we do our thing in the box, and then we leave the box and we go live our lives outside of this church. And so we're going to talk about and unpack living outside of the box. So Deb's watching my box today because here's the reality. Church is not a box. Church is a body. Church is not a box. Church is a body. And we have to begin thinking that way. This is where we're going to start. Romans chapter 12, starting in verse 4. Now, as we have many parts in one body, and all the parts do not have the same function, in the same way, we who are many are one body in Christ, and individually members of one another. Didn't talk about a church building. Didn't talk about even a location. It says that we are one what? One body in Christ. We are one body together as the church. Understand, the church is a body. And sometimes we need to think outside the box a little bit, because we say things like, this is not how it's always been. This is not how we do things. So here's your Greek word for the week. I know sometimes I don't give you your Greek word for the week, so I apologize. Here's your Greek word for the week. It's called ecclesia. Say ecclesia. Ecclesia literally means the ones called out by a herald. Literally in the Greek, that's what it means. Ecclesia is the word that is used in the Greek whenever in your Bible you read the word church in the New Testament. The background word, the Greek word for that is ecclesia. And this is what the ecclesia was all about. Let me just share with you some things. In the New Testament, the ecclesia, the church, was not joined. People were added to it. You didn't join a church. You were added into the church. In the New Testament, the ecclesia was persecuted. In the New Testament, the ecclesia, people within the ecclesia were a part of it. They weren't going to a building. They were part of the church. People are the church, not in the church. In the New Testament, the ecclesia prayed for each other. In the New Testament, the ecclesia gathered together. In the New Testament, the ecclesia sent and welcomed people. In the New Testament, the ecclesia came together. In the New Testament, the ecclesia didn't meet in an ecclesia building. They met in homes. They met in catacombs. They met in just random places sometimes where groups would get together and they would worship God together. Interesting thing that I found this week. In Iraq, they believe that they actually found possibly the first church building, Christian church building ever built. Fascinating thing. They believe that it was built somewhere between 241 and 256 AD. They don't know for sure. And what they believe is that it was a home that was altered into a church. And the only reason they know that it was a church was because it has a baptistry in it. Like, what's behind that curtain there? Like, I don't know if anybody have baptistry in your home anywhere? No. Bathtub doesn't count. Like that's why they believe it was a church. But before this, from the time Jesus went to the cross and then went up into heaven and the first church started, which was around AD 33 or so, before this, for some 220 years, people didn't go to a church building. There was no, First Christian Church of Jerusalem out there. It really was not about the location. It was about the group of people. It wasn't about the box. It was the group of people. But here today, in 2019, we say things like, let's go to church, right? And what are we talking about? We're talking about going to a specific location, right? Sometimes we say, let's go to a different church. We're not talking about, switching people groups. We're talking about a location, right? So we say, let's go to church. Sometimes we're going to be late for church, right? What are we talking about? We're going to be late to the location. We're not talking about the body of believers, right? We're talking about the location. Sometimes we say, stop running in church, right? We don't say that here. You've seen my kids. It's a disaster. But here's the thing. It's just a building. It's just a building. This is just a location. This is just a box. And so you may think this morning, Deb, help me out. You may think, so what, right? Somebody asked, so what? So what, right? So what? Like, are we getting hung up on semantics here? Like, so what? What's the big deal about the church location, the church being a box or not? Well, thank you for asking, Deb, for the second time. Yep. It was so good the first time for her that she came back again. No, okay. So what's the big deal? Well, thank you for asking. Well, I've spent a week kind of diving into the difference between a box and a body I want to share with you this morning. And the first one is this. First thing I want to share is this. Boxes don't move. Bodies do. Boxes don't move. Bodies do. Deb, you've been watching my box carefully. Has it moved? My box hasn't moved. This is off the rails already. This box does not move. And here's the thing. This box is not going to move unless an outside force makes it move, right? Because the box is not going to move on its own. It is incapable of moving on its own. But as you see me up here, nervously kind of rocking back and forth, right? Bodies move, don't they? Boxes don't move. Bodies move. A box cannot move by itself. A body can walk. A body can sway. A body can nervously kind of prance back and forth, right? And here's the thing, like this church building, it's just a giant box, right? Like that's all this is, really. 20 years ago, they kind of dug a foundation. They poured some concrete. They built up walls, and they put sheetrock on the walls. They laid this nice, beautiful green carpet, and then we found some green chairs to match, right? Some of you were like, oh, man, that's not attractive. And then we put the paint on the wall, right? And we don't really know what color this is. I'm going with industrial pink, something like that. But we kind of build this place, and it is a wall, or it is just a box, right? I mean, that's all this really is. And we really hope that it doesn't move, right? Please say yes. We really hope this place doesn't move, though if you're here at night and the wind's blowing, this place makes some creepy noises that you don't want to be here by yourself at night, I'm just going to say. But the body moves, right? The body moves. And when we take it to the spiritual context, the body moves spiritually as well. Like we are told throughout Scripture that we are moving in our relationship with Jesus. Because what does it say? It says, the Bible explains that we are in a walk with Jesus, right? As a body of believers, as individuals, we are walking with Jesus. Let's look at it in a couple places. 1 John chapter 1, verse 7. It says this, if we walk in the light as he himself is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Jesus, his son, cleanses us from all sin. Let's jump up a chapter to chapter 2, verse 6. The one who says he remains in him should what? Should walk just as he walked. Let's jump up to 2 John chapter 1, verse 4 and verse 6. I was very glad to find some of your children going to church, right? Is that what it says? I was very glad to find some of your children, what? Walking in the truth and keeping with a command we received from the Father. Verse 6. And this is love, that we go to church, right? This is love, that we walk according to his commands. This is the command as you have heard it from the beginning. You must what? You must walk in love. 3 John chapter 1, verse 4. I have no greater joy than this, to hear that my children are what? Are walking in the truth. Church is not the church is not a box. Boxes don't move. Bodies do. Boxes don't move. Bodies do. Sometimes it seems like the goal for us is just to get inside of this box and to sit in our spot inside of this box and do our thing and then leave here. Like that seems to be the goal for some of us from time to time. And I want you to hear this. This is not the goal for any believer. We come here to be fed. We come here to be strengthened. We come here to be encouraged. It's like therapy or going to the gym. And then we go out of here because what happens in here helps us be proactive in engaging a community that doesn't know Jesus outside of the walls of this box. What happens in here is not the point. It's what happens outside of here. And so there's a comparison I want to make this morning. And it's the comparison really between two mentalities as we approach how we do church. It's a destination mentality versus a journey mentality. Destination mentality versus journey mentality. Okay, here's the question. Anybody like going on trips? Anybody like traveling? Yeah? A few people? Right? Anybody traveling this week for Thanksgiving? No? Okay, we are. So my wife and I and our kids, we're getting in the car actually tomorrow because the snow's coming, and we're driving 5 hours to the middle of nowhere, Wyoming, called Riverton, in order to be with her whole family this week for Thanksgiving. Anybody traveling for Christmas? Okay. Jason is. Your husband is. So for Christmas, we're actually traveling to Scotts Bluff, which is the middle of nowhere, Nebraska, to be with my family. So we go to middle of Nebraska a lot, or middle of nowhere a lot. So I want to compare and kind of play this out by comparing my kids versus my grandparents, okay? So my kids, we have an 8-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old. She's going to be 3 in January. Our kids are destination mentality type kids. Let me explain. Yesterday, my oldest was in a swim meet in Laramie. 40 minutes away, 15 minutes down the road, my 7-year-old son was asking, are we there yet? He is a destination mentality person. When we get in the car tomorrow to go to Riverton, we are not going to be 15 minutes out of town, and he's going to start asking how much longer until we get to Riverton, Wyoming, because he wants to be with Grandma and Grandpa. He wants to be with his cousins. He wants to be with his aunts and uncles. He wants to be in the middle of the nowhere, right? He wants to get to the destination, and so they start asking that, and we have to frame it like, because understanding time sometimes is hard for young kids, so we frame it in the kind of framework of how many movies it takes to get there. You can judge me later, because we have the portable cheap babysitter for the car that we just stick movies into and they watch. So it takes like 2.5 movies to get to Grandma and Grandpa's house in Riverton. So we'll say, Brecken, it takes 2.5 movies to get there. Now leave us alone. And then like a minute later, he's like, how many towns are we going through? So we have to like recount all the little tiny towns in between Cheyenne and Riverton, Wyoming. So we're like, okay, so the first town is Chugwater, and then he's like, and then what? And then it's Wheatland, and then what? And then it's, I don't even remember, Glendo. I don't even remember how to get there. You have to count all these towns, and in his mind, he's like thinking out how far it is going to be. And all my kids do this. They just hate the journey. They want to get to where they're going. My grandparents, when my grandfather was alive, he would pack up my grandmother and a couple weeks of clothes. They would get in the car. They would call one of their daughters up and say, we are going to Texas for a couple weeks. Here's the thing. It took them a while to get to Texas because they were about the journey. They would get in the car, and my grandma would say, oh, we should go visit. She had a brother and sister who lived in Las Vegas. Yes. Listen, I went to public school in western Nebraska. Geography's not my strong point. I know that Las Vegas is not on the way to Texas. But they would drive over to Las Vegas. They would stop maybe along the way a few places, and eventually they would get to Texas. They were about the journey. Coming home, they really liked Branson, Missouri. Again, I'm not big on geography, but I know Branson, Missouri is not really in direct route in between here, between western Nebraska and Texas. They were about the journey. They were about having fun and experiencing the country and experiencing new things together. And here's the thing. I want us as a church to be on a trip. I want us to be on a trip, and I want us to be about the journey, not just about the destination. It's easy for us to get focused only on the destination, that we forget about the journey that we are on together as believers. The destination mentality, we start asking the question as a church over and over again, are we there yet? And it's not that we don't want to get there. We are absolutely, I want to get to heaven, right? I want to spend eternity with God, right? But if we only focus on that, we are missing out on the journey that God has placed us on. The journey mentality says, yes, we're concerned about the there, which is heaven, but while we are on that journey, we want to take as many people with us as possible. We're about the journey. We want to be about the journey. And so let's compare this in the church world. Destination churches, destination mentality churches, they do things like trying to have a church that just caters to everybody's needs. Kind of whatever they want, whatever they desire, whatever they need, they're going to try and provide it for them. It's a destination church. Destination churches want people just to come and to sit in their spot and to do the things that they've always done and then leave and go live their lives separately. Destination churches like to do things like being a church that sits around and does nothing but think about themselves. Destination churches think that the building is great and the location is great, and that, in fact, we have arrived because we have a beautiful, big building that's in good shape. Destination churches and destination mentality just asks this question over and over again, are we there yet? Are we there yet? But a journey mentality sees this whole life as a trip. We are on a trip, and we're going to do whatever God tells us to do and leads us to do, and we're going to go wherever he leads us to go. And so churches with a journey mentality do things like celebrate. They celebrate together. They celebrate when somebody who has been selfish does something unselfish. They celebrate it. Journey mentality churches celebrate when somebody who has struggled with addiction begins to overcome. They celebrate those things. Journey mentality churches celebrate when somebody for the first time maybe spends a little bit of time in the Bible. They celebrate that. Journey mentality churches celebrate when growth takes place in people's lives because it's worth celebrating. But here's the thing, boxes don't move. This box isn't going to move unless an outside force moves it, has influence on it, but bodies do. And we want to celebrate the movement that bodies are doing and are making as we follow Jesus together, the growth that is taking place. We are not going to be a destination mentality. We are not going to say, look at this building. Look at this beautiful building that we have. Let's celebrate the fact that we've arrived. We have not arrived until we reach heaven. And in the meantime, we're on a journey. And we want to take as many people with us as possible. So, boxes don't move, bodies move. Next. You still watching? Still watching. Okay. Boxes don't grow, bodies do. Boxes don't grow, bodies do. Has my box grown? Has not grown. Here's what you can do with a box, though, right? And we all know this. We've experienced it. Like you want to pack as much stuff into it as possible, and then what happens? Like the sides and the seams start splitting out a little bit until it just kind of breaks open, right? Like we've all been there and we've all done that. Does that mean that the box grew? No. It just means that we overstuffed it a little bit, right? And it's ironic that this comes on the week of Thanksgiving because does bodies grow? When we fill it up too full, what happens? It expands a little bit, right? Insert Thanksgiving joke here. I don't think I need to. Like some of you have your stretchy pants picked out for Thursday already, right? Okay, I picked out my stretchy pants for Thursday, okay? My goodness. Here's the thing. Healthy bodies grow. Healthy things grow. Boxes don't grow, bodies do. A healthy journey mentality does not say things like, we are large enough, we should stop growing. A healthy journey mentality church does not say that we are big enough now, that we need to just stop doing things now. It's like this. Like, let me illustrate it this way. Like maybe this week we go to Riverton, we learn about this thing, and Kimmy and I stand up on stage next week, and we have our cute little 2-year-old daughter, McKenna, and we hold her up here, and she's melting your heart because she's all cuddly, and she's cute and everything. And we stand up here and we go, hey, just so you know, from now on, we're going to give McKenna this pill every day, and this pill is going to basically stop her from changing from her current state. Okay? You laugh, but part of me is like, let's do it, because I've seen kind of what's taking place with the other kids and as they grow older. You laugh. None of this is funny, my goodness. and so we start to kind of talk through it with you, that we're going to give her this pill. She's just going to be 2 years old for the rest of our lives, and she's just going to be this kind of adorable little 2-year-old forever. And we talk about the advantages, right? Like she can't really get too far away. Like she can't move too fast because her little legs can only move so fast. And I'm not a runner by any means, but I can catch up with McKenna, right? So she's easier, she can't get away too far. She's easier to control because she's so little. Like she doesn't have a lot of muscle yet. She's a lot easier than my 7-year-old that took my breath away when he landed on me the other day. Like, he's easier to control. They're cheaper to take care of. Again, my 7 and 8-year-olds, they eat a ton of food. McKenna hardly eats anything. She's cheaper, right, to take care of. And she's never going to change. Like, I'm good where she's at right now. She's kind of clingy, which is nice most of the time. And she's kind of happy a lot of the time. She wakes up happy, which, is like the only person in our house sometimes. And it's good. I like her this way. She'll just never change. Is that a good plan? I mean, of course not. That's like the theme to a horror movie, right? Like this is not what we should be doing as parents. And yet, I wonder, have we ever tried, or we ever considered giving our churches the pill that just never allows us to change? I mean, really, have we ever considered giving our church a magic pill that just makes it stop growing? We probably have, if we're being honest, right? Like, I have. I've thought about that even for this church. Like if we just remain small, it's easier to control. It's easier to control smaller organizations and smaller churches. Like smaller churches, it's easier for an individual to get up into a place of influence and kind of have their way, influence whatever they want and get what you want. It's easier to control. It's cheaper. Smaller churches are cheaper to operate than larger churches. Example, I'm connected with a church down in Colorado, and they have experienced significant growth over the last 5 or 10 years. And so they, about a year ago, were talking about adding on to their building. They were turning parents away with their kids because they didn't have enough room in their children's ministry. And so they were wanting to build on to their children's ministry area. They go to the city in order to get the right paperwork, and the city says, well, we need to tell you this now before you can build on. You have to redo your parking lot because it's not big enough for your building and your people. You know how much it costs to redo a parking lot and to add on to a parking lot? It costs them over $500,000. Smaller churches are cheaper to run. They're cheaper to operate. And it doesn't change, which I think some of us at some level like, right? Like we like it when we can be confident that our church is going to remain the same for the rest of our lives. Our favorite things stay the same. How it's run stays the same. Like it's more comfortable just to remain the same. But here's the thing. We're not going to do that. We're not going to be about that here at North. I mean, think about what if they would have had that mentality in the first church in the book of Acts. Like day of Pentecost, 3,000 people are coming in and being added to the church, and you read on in the book of Acts, right, and thousands more, in each time are being added. What if, like, the apostles just stood up and said, no more, no more, no more, like no more people coming to Jesus, no more people coming to a saving relationship with him. Like, we need to shut this down because we don't know each other, because it's growing too fast, because it's becoming expensive in order to operate. Imagine what that would have done. I mean, we can't even imagine that in the first century church, and yet I think at some level we try to imagine that in our church today. We're not going to be about that. We're not going to be about that here. We believe that healthy things grow. Healthy nutrition plus providing a safe environment causes things, to grow. And I'm going to say this, because this is my belief. You may not agree with me, but we can argue about this some other time. I believe that if a church is not growing, it is not healthy. I believe that if a church is not growing, it is not healthy. You can argue with me about that later if you want, but healthy things grow. Rick Warren, who pastors in California and wrote the book Purpose-Driven Church, he says this. He says, lack of growth usually indicates an unhealthy situation, possibly a disease. In the same way, since the church is a living organism, it is natural for it to grow if it is healthy. The church is a body, not a business. It is an organism, not an organization. It is alive. If a church is not growing, it is dying. If a church is not growing, it is dying. And we're not talking just about numbers, butts and seats, but at some level, we are talking about numbers, too. It's not just about numbers, but it's about culture. It's about environment. It's about so many other things, but numbers have a place in it. We believe, and I believe, that if the church is not growing, then it's dying and it's unhealthy. So we're going to leave that there. We're going to move on. So boxes don't grow. The next one, boxes don't have feelings, bodies do. Boxes don't have feelings, bodies do. And like I could demonstrate, right? Like I could pick this box up and go, you're a dumb box, and just call it all the names in the book, right? Is it going to make any difference for the box? Of course not. But I could pull Mark up here and tell him all the things that I've thought. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding, brother. I love you. We could do some serious damage just by verbally attacking somebody, right? Why? Because boxes don't have feelings, but we absolutely have feelings, don't we? People have feelings. Bodies have feelings. Boxes don't have feelings. This building does not have a feeling. It does not talk. It does not have emotion. It doesn't cry. It doesn't laugh. It doesn't enjoy when people are here. It just doesn't care. This building doesn't care about you. Honestly, it doesn't care. And it doesn't care whether a church is in here, or whether a school is in here, or whether some other organization owns this place. It doesn't care. It's just a building. It has no feeling. This building doesn't care about our feelings. It doesn't care about what's going on in our lives. This building doesn't care about the people of Cheyenne. It doesn't care about the people who don't know Jesus out there. This building doesn't care about Brett and Evelyn Miller and all the people that they're ministering to over in Africa. And this building doesn't care about Andy and Genesis Kohler and all the people that they're ministering to in Ireland. This building just doesn't care because it's just a building. But this is what we're told about the body. 1 Corinthians chapter 12. It says, "And if the ear should say, because I'm not an eye, I don't belong to the body, in spite of all this, it still belongs to the body. And if the whole body were an eye, where would the hearing be? And if the whole body were an ear, where would the sense of smell be?" Jump up to verse 21. "So the eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you. Or again, the head cannot say to the feet, I don't need you. Boxes don't have feelings, but bodies do. And we need to be a church that shares in those feelings with people. We need to be a church that shares in both joy and pain for people. We need to be more intentional, honestly, about getting into groups, because that's ultimately where care happens in a church. Like, it's almost impossible for us to give an adequate amount of care for 140 people that show up here every Sunday morning. It's almost impossible for us to do that. But when you get into a group, what happens? You build relationships. You get to know other people. They get to know you. You go through struggles together. You laugh together. You love on each other. You support each other. You pray for each other. And I cannot fully express, and I've said it from here over the last year or so, just the last couple of years in our lives has been kind of a roller coaster with the amount of people that we've lost that are close to us and the hurt that we've gone through in our lives. And yet I cannot imagine going through that without the support of our small group. Because they stood with us, they cried with us, they prayed for us, they joined with us in that pain that we were going through during that time. And we need to do that for everyone. Like, that needs to be what we are about. That needs to be one of the things we're about. Boxes don't have feelings, but bodies do. Let's continue on. Boxes are useful, but bodies are valuable. Is this box useful? Yep, it had a use. This box delivered a pretty pink computer to our church earlier this week. It's sitting on my desk if you're curious about the pretty pink computer. It had a purpose, right? It was useful. It had a purpose for it. And think about boxes. Like, how do we treat boxes? Kind of crummy, right? Like, you can always pick up the people on Facebook who are moving or who are moving a bunch of stuff from one place to another. Why? I mean, what do? They get on there and they say, we need boxes. We need moving boxes, right? And it's funny how, what we will do in order to get boxes from time to time. Like, we'll go dumpster diving behind Walmart or behind the liquor store because those boxes are really good, right? Like, we've all been there. Don't try and deny it. Like we've all been in that place because we're so desperate for boxes. But what do? We get our boxes, we take them home, we pack up our stuff, we throw it in a trailer, we go to wherever we're going, and we unload our stuff. And what do we do with the boxes? We set up a mantle above our fireplace, and we set each box up. And each box has a story, and we keep them up there forever because they're so important to us, right? Of course not. We ditch them, right? We don't set them up because the box is almost irrelevant. It's what it was carrying inside. The box is just a tool. The important thing is what's inside. And that's the same thing like with this box that we're in right now. This building is just a tool. God has allowed us to have this beautiful building for our use, for what he's called us to do. But the thing is, God may take us to a different location and give us a different tool to use. And we need to be okay with that. And I know that's a hard thing because some of us have been in this church since before it was even here, right? Some of us have been a part of North Christian Church since it was called, I don't even remember what it was called before, but it was down on Syracuse, and you've seen this building develop and you've invested into this place. And yet we need to be okay if God says, you know what, your time at the end of Tranquility Road is done, I'm taking you somewhere else. Because this is just a tool, this is just a box. And here's the thing, God doesn't live here. I need us to know that. God doesn't live here. I know we like to say this is God's house, and I kind of just ignore that comment. It's whatever for me. It's not really theologically correct because the reality is God doesn't exist here only. And more importantly, God doesn't exist just in a building that we get to come in and out of. Acts chapter 17, verse 24. The God who made the world and everything in it, he is Lord of heaven and earth and does not live in shrines made by hands. He doesn't live in building. What's the point? If we believe, if we buy into the idea that this is God's house and he exists here only, It's easy for us to leave him here and go live the rest of our week without thinking that he's not there with us. Like, it's easy for us to leave God here and just say, God's here, I'm going to go live the rest of my week the way I want it, because this is God's house and he is here. This is a destination mentality thought. We don't go to God's house and visit him once or twice a week and just show up and hope that he does something, and then we go and do our own thing. That's not how this works. You are the temple of God. You are where God exists. Wherever you are, that's God's house. Congratulations. You are the temple of God. And we need to understand that. So, boxes are useful, but bodies are valuable. Finally, boxes are temporary, but the church is eternal. Boxes are temporary, but the church body is eternal. Mark chapter 13, verse 1 and 2 says this. As he was going out of the temple complex, one of his disciples said to him, Teacher, look, what massive stones, what impressive buildings. Jesus said to him, Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone will be left here on another that will not be thrown down. Here's what he's saying. It's all going to burn. It's all going to burn. The whole thing is going to burn. Now, more specifically, I think Jesus is actually talking about the destruction of Jerusalem that came like in AD 70, where there was a literal destruction that took place. But I think Jesus is also talking about something bigger than just that. He's talking about how limited of a lifespan all of this really is and how invaluable some of our tangible stuff is. Like this box, it has a purpose. It delivered a computer. Maybe it'll get reused a couple more times, but eventually it's going to be destroyed. Like it's going to be maybe broke down and reused, or eventually it might just be buried in the ground. Like, we have to understand what this means. It's all going to burn. And if we can understand what that means to the body of Christ, that where we can come here to this box because it's a tool and we use it and we get excited and we get educated, we get mobilized to go be the church outside the walls of this box, man, what a radical difference that would make in our community, right? Like, what if we really took that mentality where I am the church and we are the church and we come here and we get excited together and we get energized to go out and to interact with our community? What a difference that would make in our church and in our community. Think about this. Terry Fox was an 18-year-old boy who lived in Canada, and he developed bone cancer when he was 18 years old. He had his right leg amputated. Terry, for all of his life, loved to run in races, run in marathons. But while he was in the hospital after his leg was taken, he found himself really discouraged, really depressed about what was going on. But he started looking around at the suffering of the other cancer patients that were around him in the hospital, and he decided that once he got out of the hospital, he was going to do something about it. He was going to make a difference. And so he decided he was going to run across Canada in order to raise money for cancer research. And so he spent 18 months running over 3,100 miles in order to prepare for this run across the country. And then on September 1st, as he was in the midst of running across the country, he was about 3,339 miles in, he was forced to stop running across the country because the cancer had spread and it begun spreading throughout his entire body. And at the age of 22, Terry Fox passed away the June of the following year after he had done this. But the story doesn't end there. This young man was a hero in Canada. And to this date, his organization that he started with his run has raised over $368 million to fight cancer. And his mom, being interviewed by ESPN, she shared a quote with them, something that he had said earlier in his life. He said, "I want to try the impossible to show that it can be done." I want to try the impossible to show that it can be done. We have a chance, church, on this journey to see God do the impossible. We have a chance to see God do what we would consider impossible things around us, but we have to think outside the box if that's going to happen. As long as we build a body, not a box, we get to see God do amazing things around us. We have the chance to build a body, not a box. And we, at this church, want to see God do some pretty amazing things. We want to see God do some impossible things because we believe that he specializes in the impossible. And so the question for us is this: do you want to exist in a box, or do Do you want to be in a body that moves, that grows, that develops, that is on a journey? Do you want to just come and sit in this box? Or do you want to think bigger than this box and go impact a community that doesn't know Jesus? Do you want to sit on the sidelines and just watch God do some amazing things? Or do you want to get in the game and be a part of what God is doing in this community? We want to think outside the box. We want to impact our community. We want to connect people to Jesus Christ and each other. This is what we want to be about. And so we are going to be and going to have a journey mentality. We are going to think outside the box. We are going to be a body, not a box. And we invite you to join with us. Amen? Heavenly Father, I'm so thankful for this church. And I'm thankful that the opportunity that we have every week to come here to worship, to open your word. I'm thankful for the last 10 weeks that we've been diving into this study through Rooted, and how you have challenged us, you've challenged and convicted us, you've grown us, you've challenged us to step out and do things that we've never done before, to have conversations we've never had before. And God, I'm thankful for that. And I'm thankful for your son Jesus, that the example that he gave us on this earth. And I'm thankful that we can walk with him and follow after him on this journey until we reach the destination of eternity with you, God. Give us courage and strength and conviction to step out and think outside the box in order to impact this community that needs to know you. God, give us the strength and the courage and the conviction just to have conversations with people that we've never had before, talking about you, pointing them towards you. God, give us the strength and the courage and the conviction to connect as many people to you as possible. And thank you, we love you. It's in Jesus' name I pray.